I'm delighted to welcome Mckeel Hagerty to talk to us today in the Concours Virtual. Mckeel, as I'm sure many of you know, is the CEO of Hagerty. They are the largest classic and collector insurer in the US, and they're a real passionate advocate for the community and the hobby that we're involved in. So it goes way beyond just insurance, and in fact, I think Mckeel would be very much the first to say that they do insurance, but actually they're there to support and to develop the hobby, which they're fully involved in. And for those that don't know Mckeel is also a master in theology, which I thought was really interesting and may guide some of your principles and some of the activities that you go about. So welcome to the Concours, Mckeel.
Well, thank you. This has really been a delightful thing from the beginning. You know, when you brought the concept up during this, very strange summer that we're all having, I just said, hey, look, we need to play the passion of the automobile forward. We know the passion is not going to dry up just because we can't get together in person in the way that we like to. And, I think as you started laying out the idea of what could an actual Concours look like on a virtual basis, on a global basis, really, if you think about it. And I said, yes, let's do it, because that's what the car world needs. We need creative thinking, and we need to remind ourselves of why we really like these things.
Now, and not only have you supported our Concours, I know you were involved in the Isolation Island Concours as well.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, the Isolation Island Concours, Andy Reid developed the idea really around car models. And that is that a lot of people were at home and they have great little collections of models. What started as just kind of this maybe clever idea became this, just incredibly energetic group of people bringing these amazing, sometimes hand-built, hand-conceived of models, fantasy cars that never existed, or a car that somebody always wanted, or they take 4 different models to put together into something that, was a dream car of theirs, and put them in, situations with little people and fueling them up at a race environment and all this sort of thing. So that was really, really fun. And I'm glad that you embraced that as well here.
Yes, well, we had a great class for winners of the first 6.
Yes.
And that was fun. I know David's been a judge in the Isolation Island Concours, and it's brought a lot of fun to a lot of people. But I think what it goes to show is that despite difficult circumstances, innovation, different ways of doing things, they offer opportunities as well as the challenges that we're obviously all facing. And to be able to bring them out, whether they're scale models or like we've managed to be able to do with the virtual Concours, just gives us something to distract ourselves and to have a bit of fun. But
yes,
coming on to your involvement generally in Concours, I know you acquired Greenwich at the last year, just after their last Concours, and you've not been able to run Greenwich this year, but I'm sure you have plans to get fully involved. It'd be interesting to see why Hagerty would like to be involved in a Concours and what your plans are with Greenwich.
Of course. We've supported Concours and attended Concours all around the world for almost 30 years. And Hagerty has a presence at and supports almost approaching 3,000 car events per year around the world, US, Canada, UK, Germany. And, to me, a Concours is just, it's a kind of language of how cars are enjoyed in a way. And as you well know, the history of Concours go back something like, over a century actually. And it was always that, people would like to take a drive out into the country and, park their wonderful cars out in a grassy place, maybe have a picnic, look at each other's cars. There was always an element of kind of new cars and vintage cars and Concours. And, people know them now by their kind of location of their name. The, Pebble Beach Concours, Amelia Island, Hampton Court, Concorso, Villa d'Este, one of many of our favorites in Italy. And so it's a language. It's a language with a long history, and it's a way for the best cars to be displayed and recognized. And so our view was there was an opportunity for us to acquire the Greenwich Concours in Greenwich, Connecticut, in the United States. It's an event that takes place in May, typically. And the idea is to, learn from this and to start evolving the Concours model into, what we hope will be an even more modern, contemporary environment. Still celebrate great cars, in a grassy place on a Sunday morning, that garden party kind of thing, but then also make it a week-long event that embraces schools and, young people and, more maybe sports and racing cars even on a different day. But, it's not meant to compete with the other ones, but just to start evolving it. I hear from many people that, concours are fun, but, what are we going to do to get the next generation into them? And, our view is always, it's not about dumbing down. It's just about creating easy access points, which is, how do you get young people involved? And one of the things that we've been doing for years at Hagerty is we created a youth judging program that we now run about 100 youth car judging programs at different events around the world. And we've had thousands of young people go through it. And half of the battle with youth judging programs is to just convince some of the owners to say, look, it's okay to have 25 kids stand around your car for a few minutes, and maybe they'll get a fingerprint on it, or maybe a blade of grass will land on the floor mats. We can sweep the blade of grass out and we can polish the fingerprints off, and maybe you let them sit in the car. And almost every single time when we go do these youth judging programs, the owners are just thrilled. Thank you for, letting my car be the one that was judged. I need to do more of that. I need to get young people involved. So, my view is hold concours up to the highest standards, make them great, make them fun, make them that ultimate garden party, but just create on-ramps for other people to be able to enjoy them, because we're going to need that next generation out there 25, 30, 50 years from now owning these cars. And we're going to, they're going to have to, in many cases, because they're very expensive, they have to go become successful. They have to get into it. They're going to buy stuff that they can afford. And then someday they'll be standing next to their car in a leafy green place somewhere.
No, that's very ideal. And we were lucky enough, we had 15 of your junior judges in our concours as well. And Nigel Matthews, who's one of your global ambassadors and was running the program for them, he took them through their paces. They judged every single one of the classes. They've judged best of show. We're going to see that a little bit later. And it was interesting. They came up with an interesting selection, not quite the same as I think the main judging may come up with, but I think they had a lot of fun, and it was great to have them on board. And the two that we had a conversation with said they really enjoyed it. So it's a great initiative.
Oh, you just have to give them the freedom to choose. The first time I ever saw the junior judging program was not one of ours. It kind of inspired me, and it was at this just epic concours filled with some of the best cars that I had ever seen before. And they got free reign to pick any car in this entire car event. And they passed by the Delahaye's and the Blower Bentleys and the Porsche 917. And they picked this purple fiberglass bodied street rod as the best intro. And we're all like, well, it's a cool color. Nice job. And I just think it brings energy to the thing. And if it, the letters that I get from parents thanking us for producing that, junior judging program around the world, and saying, like, finally, my son, my daughter, had access to some of this stuff rather than the cars being behind ropes and people acting all stuffy about it. And I think that's our job. Just make stuff fun, make it accessible.
No, I agree. Now, obviously, a lot of people know you as a concours judge as well. You've been judging at Pebble Beach in the preservation classes and in many other classes around the world as well. So coming into the Concours Virtual, it's obviously a very different environment, not being able to see the cars physically. But from your perspective, how did you go about looking at some of the cars? Which are some of your favourites? And I'll hand over to Dave now just to kind of have that conversation about judging and the cars themselves, and which really bubbled to the top for you.
Well, first of all, congratulations. Again, I think what's really cool about what you created here and why it was so exciting to support it, and I was grateful to be part of the judging, is that it was a little bit like a fantasy concours. We have this thing in the US called, fantasy football, and I don't participate in it, but my understanding is you kind of get to put your perfect team together. And that's really what you were able to do. You had great classes. Each of the classes had great cars. And then, as things were sort of progressing, you started being able to have these real fantasy discussions around, oh my gosh, I couldn't even imagine seeing these 3 or 5 or 10 cars together in one spot. But just to consider them, the best of the best in these different categories, in maybe an impossible gathering, it really made for great discussion. And the judges, not only in the sessions that you created for us to interact with each other, but offline, were saying like, oh my gosh, can you imagine like that actually happening? It was really delightful. This wasn't, the Concours Virtual wasn't a compromise at all. It was something just really special. Because we all were able to engage in that true fantasy conversation. This versus that, oh, that versus this, and it made for some interesting combinations. Now, and I like cars of all ages. My own car collection has a very wide range of stuff, and I like great pre-war classic cars. I love early cars. My personal interest for years typically was in more of a sport racing car environment, and you had some of the best, Porsche 917s and, all sorts of great stuff. But who would have ever thought of some of the great racing cars sitting right next to some of the great classic cars, and us to be able to consider them side by side? It was delightful. David, you had to be just giggling to yourself about what we were able to consider.
Well, kind of all restrictions have gone, haven't they? Because, you put on a concours and you do manage to attract cars from other countries, but it's not the easiest thing to do. And
Right.
Suddenly we're saying, well, we want all these Le Mans winners, please. And we had 4 Le Mans winners in the 61 to 70 Le Mans class.
Mm-hmm.
So many things like that. But then also more accessible cars. We had the homologation cars from the 80s and 90s. And in fact, one of the cars in that, the Escort RS Cosworth,
Yes.
Turned out to have been a car that was used in the Hagerty Young Drivers program. So
I remember that. Yes.
Well, if you're going to be a young driver and learn stick shift in the States, why not in an RS Cosworth? Brilliant.
It's brilliant, truly.
So we like that. But yeah, it was really fascinating putting together 245 cars in the end. And I guess you've seen a heck of a lot of those, Mckeel, haven't you, as you've been going through for judging?
Well, yes. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun to do it this way. And then, some of them, of course, we had seen some of the truly greats. We had seen them in person, but in different contexts through the years. So, again, it's like, you almost get these fantasy versions of these cars in your mind, because we're all like the little boy collecting the little Matchbox cars. So I'd like to see that one day. And then it's like, well, I have seen that, and now I get to consider that one against this one, and it was just super fun.
Where were the best conversations? Which cars were they based around?
Well, again, probably the sports racing stuff, simply because, you get not just the car in and of itself, but, it's that wonderful thing that happens in the car world, which is, you start thinking about the drivers, and you start thinking about the teams, and you start thinking about the race. And so it brings us back to what we like about this thing. So, but again, well, you talked about the Le Mans class, or you talked about some of the other racing cars. When you're comparing racing across, when you're trying to compare what's a great, race across generations or across very different eras of racing, it's fascinating. It just, for me, we were, talking about Le Mans winner, you talk about like the 917, the 917K, that's always been a fantasy for me. I'm a Porsche guy. I mean, my first car I bought when I was 13 years old was a Porsche 911S. '67. And so, you know, in the hierarchy of Porsche cars, the 917, you know, has always had that holy grail kind of experience. Been around a lot of them, certainly never driven one. I'm not a competent race car driver, but, you know, so like one of my, you know, some of the greatest conversations I've had in the car world is to talk to the people who actually drove those back in the day, you know, and just asking I mean, like, how terrifying was it? Or what was it like to have, you know, with the first turbocharged versions, you know, what was it like to have a car that at the time must have felt like almost unlimited power, and you weren't sure if it was just going to take off like an airplane, and some of them did. So, you know, I don't know. It brought back so many memories, and I just, you know, I loved, you know, reliving some of that through this process.
Yeah, that's fair. Have you got any particular cars you want to pick out as favorites? And I know you can't say too much.
Well, I wouldn't want to, you know, prejudge. So, but, you know, you do have, there is a car in there that, you know, I would say, like, if money was no object and you could actually own it, it would be the number one car for me in the world ever. But maybe we'll just let that one rest.
I thought you might.
You bring it up later.
No, that's brilliant, Mckeel. Thank you.
Yes. So, well, thank you both. This is delightful. You together create magic in everything that you do, you know, with the magazine and all the projects you've worked on, and to pull this together in this very odd time in the car world. It really is an honor to be part of it. And, you know, I congratulate you both for your wisdom to do it, and making it a, you know, philanthropic charity effort for UNICEF. Great. Just brilliant. Congratulations. And thank you.
Well, thank you, Mckeel. I think at the time we thought it was good fun. But now with towards the very end, I think we're thinking, were we mad? As opposed, but it's been an awful lot of fun, and without supporters like yourself, from a partnership point of view in the first place, but then being involved and coming along, judging, being a full part of the whole process. It's been great to have you. So thank you very much, and see you soon.
Absolutely. We'll see you somewhere at a great car event eventually.
Hope so.